Welcome back, everyone, to episode 25 of Show and Tell. This is just my small adventure to highlight the creators and contributors to the Magic community. Today, I am super excited to be joined by streamer, judge, Magic Ambassador, Kurohitsuki. Kuro, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate being on.
Yeah, I appreciate being on because, you know, if longtime viewers of my show, which is probably nobody, I'm a very small show, may look like, what's going on in my background? You're on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. Sometimes, you know, making schedules work requires some creative scheduling. I'm in my office at home, which is very small. I've decided to call it my battle bridge. Did you ever watch Star Trek at all? Like Next Generation, they had the battle bridge, is when the saucer separated from the main part of the Enterprise. So the battle bridge was always like the secondary, kind of like they're going to go do fighting. And this is getting real nerdy, but so the saucer section can only operate on impulse drive, whereas everything else, because that's where the warp nacelles were, they could go fast.
Right.
But the battle bridge was always kind of like that crazy one. I'm like, this is my battle bridge. If I had gels for my lights, I'd probably be like a red thing right now. It's like, I don't know why we're not going to battle, but it just feels like the secondary location. So,
hey Google.
Anyways.
Turn the lights red.
Oh, see, there you go. I had a whole like lighting setup. Yeah, that looks. Oh, I can see you got the Enterprise right behind your head. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
you were talking about Star Trek stuff. I'm just like, does he know? Chat, does he know?
I didn't know. Now I know. Oh, see, that's some that's fate right there.
I got it right here.
There you go. Okay.
Yep.
So now I almost feel bad that I'm over here like, well, you know, they separated. I was, that's the Enterprise.
Did you know?
The Enterprise.
Yeah.
He knew. Listen, I'm a Star Wars guy. Like I watched Next Generation. Yeah. So I always thought the ships in Star Trek were really like the way all the ships looked.
Yes.
Like there was a cool like look to them. Like, oh, that's It's like,
okay. Well, you and I are the same person. We have a lot in common because I also. I'm a bigger Star Wars fan than I am Star Trek, just because I'm just physically deeper into Star Wars than Star Trek. But I find the ships in Star Trek to be just way sexier in a lot of ways. Yeah. The Enterprise E is the sexiest ship I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's I always wondered like, okay, like how would the phasers on the Enterprise work against like a Star Destroyer? Like it seemed like it'd be pretty powerful, but then like if you had starfighters, could they deal with like? Anyways, it's these things. Like I'm sure you've probably had those thoughts too. It's like, how would that work? Like a few X-wings could probably take out the Enterprise.
There's been videos on YouTube forever of like Star Wars versus Star Trek. How would it work? I believe at the end of the day, Star Trek would lose due to the sheer numbers. But yeah.
It's always funny. Okay, this is now a Star Trek pod. Because the Enterprise in Next Generation is like the flagship, right? It's like the main. Like, I always kind of forget about that because it's like, oh yeah, no, this is like their main whatever.
Right.
Not that they were ever really designed for warfare, right? That was kind of the thing. It's more of an exploratory scientific exploration vehicle, but like it had, I think at the time. But yeah, is the E, is that the one that's
from
the later movie?
Yes, the later movies, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
probably due to the
my favorite one right here. It is.
Yeah,
I love it so much. It's my absolute favorite. Just
they go. I remember they were ordered not to go help at some Borg fight. Was that Wolf?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to remember now. Like
the Borg were attacking, going straight towards Earth. This is not this is post like Locutus and everything like that.
Yeah.
But they were going to attack Earth. And they're like, don't help, stay over here. And then Data's just like, I think I speak for everyone. I say, to hell with our orders. And then they go, and it's the coolest, one of the coolest space battles ever. Super hype. The Defiant was there, which I also the Defiant over there. Worf was in that. And then...
That's right.
They beat them by shooting in one heavily defended area with all of their firepower, because that was what you should do, apparently.
Yeah, it's very it's got two things to say. Is one, has the part where Worf's in it and he's just like, it is a good day to die, and he's all like, Klingon-y, and I think everyone else is like, no, we don't know.
Right, yeah. He's like, the weapons are down, shields are down. He's like, ugh, looks like perhaps today is a good day to die. Prepare for ramming speed. And it's just like,
Yes.
oh no.
Such a good scene.
It's so good.
And yeah,
I love it so much.
and it's a very very Ender's Game kind of thing. Did you ever read Ender's Game, the sci-fi novel about kid generals and kind of like video game stuff?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the alien formix are like it's like a queen hive, and like the guy stumbles upon like, oh, they're protecting this one thing, so it's like kind of very Borg inspired.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
timeline wise, what came first, but
that's a great
I'm sure
question.
The Ender's Game definitely came first. But
Before the
because
Borg,
Borg
yeah.
But like, I'm trying to remember. I wonder if Star Trek came before Ender's Game. I don't know. We've veered completely off topic, but
Completely
man,
off course. Well, until there's a Magic the Gathering universes beyond, Star Trek. In which case, then we've been on the right course the whole time.
oh yeah, it's. Gosh, I wonder what's gonna come first, Star Trek or Star Wars. I feel like with the Marvel thing coming up, Star Wars feels inevitable.
Star
Yeah.
Wars. I like after that. I don't think that there's anything I could possibly be more excited for personally.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. It's
Yeah.
There's even a new Star Wars card game coming out, which I'm kind of like,
Oh, again?
ooh. Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
it's the same company that's in like the last 2 or 3 of them, Fantasy Flight Games, and
Yeah.
it looks very Fantasy Flight Games-y, which is kind of maybe not the best thing in the world, but is what it is. Nothing will ever top Star Wars CCG. That was my OG card game.
That was your
from
OG, yeah.
back I used to still collect it. It's that's always gonna have the nostalgic place in my heart. Played that before I even played Magic, to be honest. Which
nice.
Star Wars is always my first love.
Listen, it'll get the full set treatment like Lord of the Rings did, like the full suite. So, and depending on how they break it down, there could be like a Star Wars set, and it's just like the Rebel Alliance, like Galactic Civil War, and then maybe like a year or 2 later, it's like the Clone Wars. Like they could go really ham with it. I don't know what they'll do, but I could not be more excited, and even just like the prospect of it happening. I am. Luke Skywalker deck is the last deck I'll ever make. I don't need to make anything else after that.
Yeah, it's wild the Universes Beyond stuff, because like the first one was Walking Dead, which was weird. Like, okay, zombies, and I know everyone's kind of like, but at this point, it's like, man, like the Doctor Who thing's been awesome. Like, I've been super stoked on Doctor Who, and Lord of the Rings. Like, Lord of the Rings was perfect. Like the Lord of the Rings set was
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. So it's like a little weird. Like as someone who's played like for a while, it's a little weird sometimes seeing like, oh, like they just had a lore, like there's like Tomb Raider set and like the Jurassic Park stuff, but it's really like it's fine. It's just more stuff. There's not
especially
high fantasy.
Once they address I can't argue the legitimate criticisms with the Walking Dead. Those are the first the first ones, and I mean, like Rick Steadfastly there is incredibly powerful. The effect is just incredibly good. And you could only buy it there at the time, right? That was before the promise of if we're doing stuff like this, they'll be remade later. And post that promise, I think it's been all gravy and uphill. But I absolutely understand the issues with the original Walking Dead.
Yeah, and it was the mechanically unique Secret Lair cards. It was the first one. Like I don't think For better or worse, they probably didn't know like what people were gonna say or what people were gonna think. Like they're just like, oh, this is a cool card, like whatever. But like, no, like we need access to it for everybody, like the
right.
So, but I, to Wizards' credit, they were like, okay, we hear you. We're gonna rectify this. We'll print them in universe versions, and I don't know, has the Walking Dead ones even started appearing?
They have started. It was in, I want to say like 2 sets ago, whatever that means to anyone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they did very recently, and they're like hard to find. Like I haven't seen any of them physically in person. I think maybe Michonne's card I saw physically in person. But I've seen the Rick online. So, like, I know what it looks like, but the rest of them, I have no idea what they even look like.
Yeah.
They were very hard to get.
Yeah, because they're essentially list cards, right? I think that's kind of a
Yeah.
list slot,
Right.
which is smart. I mean,
still is competing with the list cards. So.
Yeah, I know. It's I mean, if you're, for a company to make money, like it's not the worst way to go. But it's just another thing to look out for as we buy packs and boxes and all that kind of good stuff. So, all right, we have just rocketed into the stratosphere with whatever. So I'm gonna try to pull this thing back a little bit on a course. I joke, down for veering, but let's establish a baseline a little bit here. So Kuro, talk about Magic. What got you into playing Magic? When did you start playing Magic? What was your foray into the Magic world?
So I started back in 2010, or like that's when I was getting into it. But I always say like 2011 was like kind of really where I started. It was just like high school me was playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and my close friends were playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and then eventually I just kind of got dragged, kicking and screaming, mind you, but I got dragged into Magic. The Vampire Precon deck back, not even Precon's the wrong word, but the Vampire intro deck, with Captivating Vampire on the front, like just struck me as like, ooh, like vampires on here, like I can have a vampire deck because I love Typal, and I'm like, oh, I can do vampires because it was around the time of Zendikar, so that was like the first time in a long while that they were like a full on type, and that kind of like that aspect really attracted me to it. And then I was a high schooler, so like Jace with his little emo hood, it was also just like really spoke to me too. So it's just like combine those two, and I was in. I was just in.
I feel like Jace for a lot of people is like, oh yes, I am Jace. I can relate to him so much.
Yeah,
breathe with my hoodie. Yeah.
As much as we want to deny it now, yeah, absolutely. And then the lore of Zendikar was like rather intriguing, but it was the next set, Scars of Mirrodin, and just like kind of like reading the weekly stories that would come out back when they were weekly. It was like the coolest thing I ever read. Just the story of the war, the Mirror and Phyrexian War and the invasion, all that, and I was just like, wow, this game is really, really deep. And then you look at the cards, and you're like, oh, like it's really telling that story, and blah blah blah. The watermarks, especially, and Vorthos. I am very much a Vorthos. As certainly, at least in terms of like the core of why I got into Magic, and why I continue to build too many commander decks now. It's always like for a Vorthosian reason.
I think one of the more underappreciated aspects of the game is kind of like the lore and the Vorthosian kind of aspect to it.
Yeah.
Especially when I started playing, I aged myself in the Urza block, so way back in the early 90s. And we had kind of this is really pre-internet days. So like, there were a bunch of novels though, and then they put out a bunch of books. I never unfortunately read them because I was lazy, but you hear a lot of people talk about pretty highly about some of those old books. I mean, back in the day, you could buy a fat pack, which a fat pack was like 6 packs, a cool little box. Do I have any around here? I have them somewhere. I have some older ones, but sometimes they would come with like a novel, and a lot of those novels were pretty interesting and a pretty good way to kind of dive in. But it the access to the lore was a little more restricted, but even just talking about Urza, right? Urza and Mishra, you get these little tidbits from flavor text and different cards,
right?
And it kind of even just I think a lot of times when it's done well, not having all the information makes it that much more interesting. Having everything out in the daylight or having all questions answered could be a little disappointing in some aspects, but I do think they've really ramped up the focus on story and trying to incorporate, articles online, and then just telling the story through the cards, like you mentioned with the watermarks.
Right.
When I came back to the game after being away for a few years during Dominaria, I kept seeing. I think it was like the planeswalker symbol in the
Right.
box, kind of reference like, oh, this is a story moment, and like, oh, that's a
Right.
really
Right.
cool way to
Right.
kind of draw
Point
people
it
in.
out.
Like, oh, this is like
Yeah.
where before I like be like, okay, this is like a card and this thing, and they might go, oh, that's what that's referencing. Like you have to
Right.
kind of
It's
know.
like, oh, there's Urza's head cut off, and you're like,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
The card I looked at right before it, he was fine. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, sure, okay, right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, but it's there's there's some deep lore. I mean, I think just the fact we saw it, especially I think with the kind of the Return of the Phyrexians and like Martial
Yeah.
Machines, all would be one.
Mhm.
Even just like the Phyrexian language, like the fact that they have an entire language
Right.
designed, like there's you don't do that if you're not dedicated to the story more than
Mhm.
just like kind of a throwaway parts here and there.
Exactly, right. It was clearly not just like a throwaway villain thing for them, like the people who were designing that set, both the set itself and the Phyrexians and the themes, and also the story. Like I got to become close friends with the author of that, like the March of the Machines storyline. It's just
wow.
like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of love, and there's a lot of that goes into it, and some slight incongruencies, but like there is still just like, it's always people just trying to like do their best, on their aspect, and that's always great to see, and it shines through in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I definitely think just pretty much most people at Wizards specifically,
Yes.
regardless of like what's kind of happening, is like they're dedicated to making a really good world, being story, game pieces, all that kind of stuff. Hasbro, however, that's a different story. But Wizards, we stand Wizards people.
We absolutely do.
They're,
we absolutely do. Yeah.
You can tell the people who work there love the game, and that's the kind of people you want making your game.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Okay, 2011, 2012. All right. So when did you start? I know you're pretty much primarily a Commander player now. When did you kind of discover Commander? Or actually, before that, I actually wanted to ask you. So you were a Yu-Gi-Oh player. Yu-Gi-Oh scares me. I've always looked at that game. I'm just like, there's too many words in those boxes. Like I don't even understand. And like the life totals, like the numbers are too big. It's like, oh, there's thousands and 500s, like too much to track. But how was it coming from Yu-Gi-Oh to Magic in terms of like picking up the game, I guess, that transition?
Yeah, so I mean, this is back in 2010, 2011. So like my main thing, so they kind of had like original Yu-Gi-Oh and very close to the show and all that, and then they kind of just like introduced more kind of like newer, bigger time mechanics. Like fusion summoning was like always there from the beginning, and it's like, okay, I kind of understand that. And then like they came out with like synchro summoning, which is just this extra thing on the side, but like I really enjoyed the themes of synchro summoning. It was a very like character centric sort of thing too, so I liked that. And maybe it was just like me as a kid not really like understanding or like wanting things to change, but then they came out with like a new mechanic. I think it was like XYZ summoning, and I couldn't understand it. I didn't like that they like weren't doing synchro summoning anymore. I'm like, I don't know these characters. Keep on supporting the ones I like, blah blah blah. So that was like the right time, pretty much like the right time where it's like, okay, I am no longer wanting to be into this. Let me see what my friends have been trying to drag me into. Oh, vampires are there? My girlfriend at the time loves Twilight. It's basically like it'll be great. And then it was just that way. Like it was all downhill from there.
It's all done.
Yeah,
that's funny.
But in terms of like going from one to the other and like learning the mechanics, it's hard to remember from back then. But I liked that certain words had definition, or like certain effects just had definitions. So like, you'll have a whole paragraph to describe what trample is on the like Yu-Gi-Oh card at the time, whereas Magic just calls it trample, and I liked that shortening of the shortening of the words. It's just like, listen, you know what it is. It's trample. Let's go on to the rest of the abilities or something else. And that was like one way in which I kind of like really appreciated not having like actual paragraphs of text, that
Yeah.
was unique to each card. I don't even know how Yu-Gi-Oh keeps doing it, but God, somehow every single card is its own novel doing something. Whereas, as much as we feel like, Strixhaven kind of did weird stuff, it's,
Yeah.
It's not always the exact same.
Yeah, that's funny. And I know you mentioned you like typal kind of decks. Is that not? Again, I'm gonna speak as a really uninformed person.
Mhm.
Is that not quite a deck type in Yu-Gi-Oh? Like, I guess you.
It is, and I found it. I stuck to those types too. So like I did like spellcasters, and there's a character called Endemon, and they have they call it like a spell counter mechanic, basically energy, in a way.
Okay.
They had a very similar to like energy mechanic, and Demon specifically was a character, and like other cards in like the school of Demon and blah 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 dealt with spell counters, and I'm like, you know what, I like that. I pick up all the cards that just like say spell counters on it, and then I put it together in a deck, and then like that's what I'm doing. Even if I lose, I was still following like the themes and like doing the spell counter thing, and like all the characters go together in some way, shape, or form. And like that's what I always look for. I always love the synergies that are present in both like the card's art, the card's text, the setting that they're in, blah blah blah. I really delve into that and connect with that a lot. And Magic had that, especially at the time with the vampires and Zendikar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I had to recover memory. When Yu-Gi-Oh first came out, it definitely intrigued me because I had the show and kind of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think I collected cards. Like I bought some starter decks. There was like the Yugi starter deck, the Kaiba, and then I think there was a Pegasus and a Joey Wheeler one. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I would watch the show like after school or whatever. So I was like, oh, I'm going to build a deck. I'm just going to build Yugi's deck. Whatever card I would see in the show, I'd try to find.
Right, yeah.
Which it's not good. It is not a good
No.
It was not a good deck. And I got to college, and my buddy is like, oh, I have a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I'm like, oh, I think I have one too. We should play sometime. And I had never played before. And I kind of told him, and he's like, I don't know if that deck's going to work. I'm like, I don't know. Let's see. And immediately it was like, what was it? Jinzo? I think at the time
Jinzo,
he just killed me. I was like, oh, yeah, you're probably right. This is probably not a way to make a competitive deck and so but it just made me laugh. I think he was kind of laughing at me like, it's a weird way to build a deck. He's like, yeah, I have these cards. And I was like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
turns out Celtic Guardian not that great, but it's great in the show.
No, God, that's right, Celtic Guardian, and then Summon Skull, right? That was
Summon Skull, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I do appreciate about like modern day Yu-Gi-Oh, just from what I've seen, they have gone back and like brought new life to old archetypes. So like, if you like Dark Magician, you can absolutely do a Dark Magician deck. There's, upgraded versions and
that's cool.
Like, through lines that you can now like play to kind of like revive the archetype and everything. So there's Unsummoned Skull stuff. There's Blue Eyes stuff and all that. So I do like that. Like that part is nice. But but Magic does that now when they go to Ixalan and they upgrade. They make new Merfolk, and then now all of my Merfolk decks are just better because of it. So
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, no, that's cool. I like seeing that. I really like Knights. That's kind of been my go-to, I guess, typal kindred focus.
Yeah.
And I got really happy with, I think it was March of the Machines. They released a new Knights commander. I'm like, oh, this is it.
Knights,
this is the commander I've been. Oh yeah. So that's not my favorite color pairing, or I guess pairing for Knights, but it's really good. So it's like, okay, this is pretty.
It has
neat.
Eminence.
Yeah, I know, and it's eminence that doesn't feel bad for everyone else. I would say.
Right.
When I first got into Commander, I started building I made an Edgar Markov deck. I was like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah, me too.
And then everyone, you kind of start hearing people talk about Edgar Markov. Like, oh, this is probably too strong. And you kind of like, maybe we set this for special games when we really need some extra. Harumph to kind of get going.
But at the same time, it was like the only place that you could play your vampires, and if you like vampires, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I like that there's options now.
Yes, definitely a lot of options. So Commander, so when did you trying to think about timelines when Commander first started. Did you get into Commander pretty soon after getting into Magic, or was that kind of your first, or were you playing, or what got you into Commander specifically?
So first it was Zendikar, then it was Scars. Fell in love with everything, like truly, Scars block was where I cemented my just undying love. And then Innistrad, and Innistrad into RTR was when I started playing in card stores.
Okay.
And it was. I remember I went to my first card store because I was the president, the founder of the anime gaming guild at my college. Because I'm a big old nerd, and I wanted to do a learn to play Magic day, and I wanted to make a deck that was based on the guilds, so I would go, we'll get the guild leaders, we'll put them in the deck, 60 card deck still. I didn't have no idea what Commander was, but I just I still just wanted that each guild is represented, so when people come by and say what's Magic, it's well, here's a guild, do you like the Rakdos, they're like this, and blah blah blah. And that process of just having a leader signifying character that kind of just has the traits of your group was perfect to me. Love Ravnica for that. And then just as I played more and more in the shop, and as I guess that year went on, I got into Commander because it's just I know this stuff is rotating out and standard feels blah blah blah, but if you like these characters, there's a way where you can just keep on repping these characters. And my first ever Commander deck was Teysa Envoy of Ghosts. It's my favorite art in Magic, and I love the card despite it being overcosted. But it was just a way to represent hey, I really like this character, and I'm going to build a deck that I believe that she would want to be in, right? Or something that lets her show her talent as a card off. And then my next deck was Asperia, which is also one of my favorite decks, one of my favorite characters, one of my favorite arts. And yeah, so RTR block was my get into Commander because there was guild leaders. There were people who represented the factions that I really liked from a lore perspective, and how could I not?
Yeah, I remember when the original Ravnica came out and they started splitting the guilds. First, it was really cool because they introduced Shocklands, which was oh wow, this is wild. Probably the closest things to true duels that really we still have seen. But just it was almost such a no-brainer in the way they designed the guilds. It's almost surprising it took them as long as they did to kind of hit on that, because the idea of allied and enemy pairs, well, they had kind of touched on it back in what blocks, Apocalypse and some previous multicolored blocks. But for them to be well, let's just take the colored pairs and create whole the guild aspect.
Yeah,
I think that was
around them,
so I think that was a very elegant design choice that obviously has had probably one of the biggest influences on deck building ever, really, right? Because we even refer to the color pairs now. You don't really say blue green, you say Simic or you say Rakdos. It's been so ingrained into our lexicon now as Magic players. So
absolutely, the identity of those colors goes through the filter of the guilds first, and then you can break it down and go oh, it's blue, white, blink, right? But in general, when you think blue and white, you picture Azorius first, and what that looks like to you, and then you could say oh, blink, oh, okay, Brago, stuff like that. But
but yeah, it's I think there's the Commander format is definitely there's just so many ways to play it, right? You can build commanders based on themes or just on the color pairings, or everyone who's got a hat in this color pairing. It's such a
Ladies
broad
looking left.
yeah, right. It's
Guys in
so
chairs,
funny
yeah.
some of the kind of decks, and for like players, like for me, it was like, oh man, I could use all these cards from way back in when I first started playing that are kind of useful again. And sometimes you'd find
Right.
some treasures in those old cards
Mhm.
that before you'd be like, oh, what is this, 7 cost enchantment gonna do for me now? But like all of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, this is. I don't know if that actually exists, but you know what I mean. Like you find these
Yeah,
cards
yeah.
that like
No,
you
it
never
works.
played.
Right, and it works for your commander more than it does for anyone, like any other commander. It's that very specific niche. And yeah, it turns out it's cost 20 cents and now it's yours, and you get to have this unique card that you're not just going to see in every commander deck, and it's unique to your commander. I love that. I love that aspect.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely being able to kind of express yourself through your deck building in commanders. I think one of the more
Yes.
interesting and fun aspects of the format. And I'm definitely been like, I'm sure. I mean, you kind of mentioned before. I think I can. You just get an idea. It's like, oh well, there's another deck I got to build. Like something just sounds like, oh, this is like a fun idea for a deck. Like this, I haven't seen this
Yeah.
before. Let me, scrape together another,
Yeah.
99 card deck, and let me put this thing together and see how this kind of
Yeah.
works out.
No, it happens to me a lot. I have 49 commander decks. Like when I say I cannot stop, I mean it. Like what I try to do, or what's tended to happen is just like every set there is typically some character or someone that I just like attach to well enough to want to go like, you know what, I feel like repping this person as like, here's the Innistrad person, or here's the Strixhaven character that I like the most, and like let's build a deck around that.
Yeah.
Luckily for the most recent Ixalan, they just upgraded Merfolk, so I didn't have to build anything new.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's what I end up doing, and where was I going with that? Yeah, just that like kind of worthless aspect. They do keep on making them, and I keep on building decks.
I know. It's almost this. Gosh, I don't know. I think this episode's probably not going to go until 2024.
Mhm.
But it is December. But we are in what finally a somewhat respite of not new releases. Exelon just came out, but we really don't have anything like new. We got Ravnica Remastered coming out in about
Right,
a month.
exactly. Yes. Oh god, I love remaster sets because I can just not pay attention. I
Yeah.
get like 1 month where I don't care.
Yeah.
I just blank and I just chill and vibe, and it's just like, oh, this is being reprinted. Sure, cool.
Yeah. Right.
Neat. But yeah, I do like reprint sets for that reason.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. We'll see. I mean, with they always find a way. Like Dominaria Remastered, like had some cool reprints. A lot of like I really like Richard King Ferguson, and he had a lot of art in that set. So I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna buy a bunch of singles just to have these cards. Um, but Ravnica Remastered, those old bordered shocklands, I'm just like,
Oh yeah.
well, definitely
Oh
gonna have
yeah.
to buy most of those. Like
Yeah, I got a couple
I
of them here.
Yeah, they just look so good.
Mm.
I can't not do it. So pretty excited for that set to see just for kind of singles. And I think after that we get Thunder Junction. Is it the Cowboy set? Is that the
I
next?
think Thunder Junction's the next big set. Yeah. Oh no, sorry,
So,
no, Murders at Karloff Manor.
oh yeah, obviously, duh.
Yeah.
They just got bombarded with all the clue and all that.
Yeah,
That's right.
and it's
Yeah.
more Ravnica, so you forget. But yes, Murders at
Yeah.
Karloff Manor. It bums me out that it's not like a real Ravnica set, because I like the guilds, but some of the characters I like are there, so that's fine. Tace is there, so I'm good.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. Should be interesting. Seems like it's going to be very tropey. I know there's like a Scooby-Doo-esque card, like the you meddling kids and all that kind of stuff. So
Nice.
they are doing a pretty interesting thing with like the what is it? Almost like an interactive mystery. I can't
Yeah.
remember. It's like almost like a what do they call it? Like an augmented reality game. Not really.
Yeah, an AR.
Oh,
Yeah, AR.
maybe.
Yep.
An AR, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. I mean, I like that they're trying stuff. I like they're trying
Yeah.
new things and not just like, oh, here's another set. Just
Right.
here's just keep pumping sets out. At least there's something kind of unique about it. So that should be pretty fun. Well, so obviously, Commander does seem to be your love. I mean, 49. I thought I had a lot of decks. Kind of. I have a decent amount for how often the amount of decks I have for how often I play is probably a little wonky because I just recently have convinced some friends who we do D&D and some other games. They have started getting into Magic, so I kind of now finally have a somewhat consistent play group, which has been fantastic.
Nice. Absolutely.
But for you, and obviously aside from building decks and playing, you also stream Commander on Twitch.
Yep.
So it's always interesting when you kind of make that move from just like, oh, I play Commander to, you know what, I'm gonna host a Twitch stream with different pods. So were you new to streaming when you started hosting your kind of Commander show, or was it like you had been streaming other stuff before, or what's your streaming history like?
Yeah, my streaming history, I think I started streaming 6 years ago from now, 2017. 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have people who are like coming up on like 16 months subscribed, so I guess that's how long I've been doing it. But yeah, no, I started my main game when I started was Rainbow Six Siege.
Okay.
Yeah, I always did like variety, but Rainbow Six Siege was my main game, and that's where I certainly grew like most of my my base. And I worked at a Magic store, like throughout like the earlier parts of that. So like I would get off of work at 11, make it home, and then I would start streaming. And I would stream late into the or early into the morning because I didn't have to sleep because my shift started at 5, right? So it was just like that was a big part of it. And so because I was doing Magic there, I didn't always want to come home to more Magic, right? So Rainbow Six Siege was my jam, and then I started doing. Then Arena came out, and I started doing some Arena because I'm like, this is actually really fun. I get to play Standard when because I don't get to play it when I'm working, right? Yeah. So Arena was actually very fun, and then I just started losing at Arena by like a lot. Like I would go entire streams without winning a single game, and that was extremely frustrating. So then I heard about Spell Table, and was like, you know what? I'm gonna do this instead. Literally, it was not even as like a content thing. I dabbled at first. I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna see what Spell Table's like. See if I could just play EDH instead, because this is like entire 6+ hour streams not winning once was like very, very draining, and that's on me. I was just bad, but but yeah, being able to do Commander, which I always had decks for and always loved doing, and at a certain, I think I did it for like maybe a month, where I did both like Arena and Spell Table before I just completely went over to Spell Table, as I have now, and yeah, here I am.
Now listen, I play a lot of Arena, and I am not a conspiracy theorist, but I play a lot of aggro decks, and for some reason, Arena, I've started tracking, just refuses to let me be on the play, like at all. It just
refuses.
on the draw, 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 on the play, on the draw.
Want you to fight for it.
They want, and it's and listen, I'm not a shuffle, and I'm not a truther about the shuffler. I'm not, but when you're on the play, 33% of the time, with an aggro deck, it becomes very hard to make any progress on the ladder. That's all I'm saying. It can be, I can understand why Arena could be a little frustrating at times. Refuses to give me hands with more than 2 lands. I play a lot of best of 1, so maybe that's on me. I know there is some weird hand smoother thing, which I think probably is unnecessary, but I digress.
I would suggest playing maybe one more land, but I feel you. Like I get that. It can be very brutal.
Yeah. Now listen, it's like starting hand. Oh, I get a 1-lander. I mulligan. I get 5 lands, and it's just Come on, just give me one.
Mhm.
Anyway, okay. No, yeah,
That's
it's
why, hey, in Commander, there was partial mulligan for the longest time, and I loved it. And then when they finally changed, it's like I just say mulligan until you get a keepable hand. I don't
yeah.
need anyone to not be able to play. So I'd rather that happen.
And that's, I mean, as someone who's discovered Commander, that's kind of, I think, what draws a lot of people in, right? Like,
Hmm.
winning's fun, right? You're playing and like
Yeah.
you don't play to just lose, but
Hmm.
obviously when you sit down for a game of Commander, everyone's just trying to have a good time, right? So, being able to be like, just mulligan, you get a starting hand. Don't, as long as you're not abusing it,
Right.
and that's
Yeah, you trust them.
There's
You trust them not to.
yeah,
Don't-
unless you're playing a CEDH where it's a competitive part, you're
right,
trying
where
to
you
win.
don't
Like,
do that.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is
Yeah.
absolutely fine. Yeah.
But being able to sit down and like enjoy a game and have your deck do things, right? That's everyone's just trying to do stuff when they play, right? They want to
Mhm.
tap some lands, they want to turn some creatures sideways, they want to cast some spells, and
Right.
it's the if you win, cool, that's neat, but like really it's really the journey is the destination when it comes to
Correct.
Commander. I think that's a very good
Mm-hmm.
mindset to have, and
Yeah, absolutely.
I
It's just a game that you're trying to. It's a type of communication, a conversation, if you will, that you just want to have with someone, and it doesn't matter like who won the conversation per se. It's just that you were able to keep on speaking for a long time.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So as a streamer, what are as someone who hosts a pod, what have been some I guess things that maybe you have learned as a streamer hosting a pod, or maybe if someone's like, I think I would like to start streaming some pods or super better, like any tips or tricks or just information you think would be like you wish you would have known beforehand, like getting started. I know I'm putting on the spot here a little bit, but
No, I'm
and,
trying. I'm trying to answer honestly and earnestly. It's like I know for a fact that I am incredibly blessed for the community and just like the circle I've been able to kind of like cultivate or have cultivated around me. So like in terms of like jumping on spell table and playing with randoms, I've never done that. I've never had to because I've always had like people I can reach out to invite on for a game. And then as I started making it like more and more of a content thing, I'm like planning out the whole calendar for the month. It's like, okay, this person, send them a link to a Google Calendar, they sign up, and it's like, boom, all right, what are we playing tonight? Blah, blah, blah. Most people that I play with just tend to have like a really good idea of just like which of their decks seems fun to actually play. Not just that they won, but like fun for everyone involved. Maybe it's like some unique mechanic. Maybe it's just something interesting. I've been incredibly lucky with like on basically 100% of the people like understanding that. And so like in terms of like advice I can give, and this is true for like pretty much any video game I've ever played, get friends that also want to play it and improve in it. Because if you do, like, those friends are going to like, look up different strategies and like talk to you about it, or they'll want to play more games so that they can like learn something new or get better. And then you get to go like, hey, I know that this person understands that like I really hate this kind of deck, so they have a different kind of deck, and then that we'll play that together and things like that. Just building your own like kind of like little community out of it where people can just understand how they want to converse with each other. And that's like the best thing that's for any video game, whether it be Rainbow Six Siege. I was always lucky in that regard too, because I always had like a full stack to play with, and it was of different people, so I always got a variety. And same with Magic, being able to play with as many people as you can. Definitely have multiple decks. That's my number one like advice. I could not imagine. It is just so not me. But I could never just have like just one deck. Having multiple decks that can go like, okay, where this is a low power pod, they're looking for like not combos and things like that. Luckily, I have an interest in decks and commanders that can still be fun to play without needing to be a combo piece, you know? And then I can also go higher power if I need, or lower power, or whatever in between. That's what I would say is my number one advice. Or number two. Number one is definitely try to find friends that want to play it just as much and just as deeply as you do. And then second, have multiple decks, please, for the love of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good advice. And you actually kind of touch on something that I talk about a decent amount on here, is the importance of like community and building community, but also cultivating community. I think one of the most impressive aspects, at least in my opinion, of the Magic community is the openness and willingness to allow people in. Into a safe and fun place to sit down and engage and play cards.
Yes.
And it can be hard for a lot of people who may not always feel comfortable in like a game store or something. They kind of to approach the situations. And it's like one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on too is you talk about actors in the community and like cultivating the community. And I like to say that we can build the community we want to see.
Right.
And I see pods like yours, and it's like that's a good example of like, see, this is like the importance of building out our community and making people feel comfortable. And I think that's a very important aspect. I mean, it really goes for any sort of game or hobby, right? There's different like Rainbow Six Siege or like whatever different thing you're into. But like I would say for us, and I guess at least in regards to this podcast, right, it's Magic based, right? So like I like I'm always super proud to see the people who are out there, like who are people in the community, and like what they're doing and how they're helping cultivate a community that is open for everyone to kind of come into. So I think that is very important and maybe underappreciated aspect of what someone like you does, because it can be easy to kind of not see it or not be cognizant of it. But like it's I think it's important to like go like, hey, no, this is like you're doing doing good work. Like I want you to know you're doing good stuff, and I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I'm glad
thank you.
We have people like you who are going out there hosting pods and having people kind of come on and doing that kind of thing. So and I also want to say, you kind of talked about even just selling a Google Calendar. I don't think people realize sometimes like how organized you have to be to do these sort of pods, right? We were for people who kind of, I was waiting for you to finish up a pod before you hopped on here, which again, first off, props to you. I would be passed out of sleep right now on the West Coast. But you were even going through like your schedule over the next week. I think you have like a Whatnot stream coming up, and you have another stream maybe later, I think on Saturday or whenever it is.
Yeah.
But like the attention to detail that is required to be like a successful streamer is something that cannot go unsaid. Like that is a very, I think, important skill that people may not all have, but it is something to work on if this is something you want to do, right? That's organization is king, right?
Yeah. I always feel like I can improve on it too. But I know when I first started streaming from like literally the beginning, I knew that I had a schedule, right? It's like I know that I get off of work at around this time every day, like every weekday. So I should have this amount of time, like, to get back home, do, if I have errands to do, whatever, right? But it's just like, get back home, I can stream for this amount of time, sleep, wake up, do blah, blah, blah. I knew, and I know that I have a life that is conducive to being able to do this. And then I plan it into my schedule. I plan on, stream start at 7 and go to 10. That's one pod. And then from 10 to whenever that one ends, that's pod number 2. And the best way, and I've gone through a couple different calendar apps and all that stuff, to try to find like the best way to do it. Google, everyone tends to have, and, links are easy enough to share. But, just trying to find and consistency is like huge, very, very key. Being able to, know that you are going to play on Mondays and Tuesdays and Fridays and blah, blah, blah. is very important. So like I know when I get out of work, I gave myself break time. I scheduled break time in there, and then from 7 to 10, and then 10 to end. I know where I'm gonna be, unless life happens and there's other extraneous circumstances. But like that's where I will be every week, unless something weird happens. And to facilitate that, right, to make sure that other people are on my schedule, I will make a calendar and I will invite you. At the end of the month, here's the invite for next month. Here's like a Calendly link, and boom, like fill out what date works for you. Tuesday at 7 p.m. On like the 13th, you're good on that. I believe you. I trust you. That's when we're gonna play. I'll contact you the day of. Tell me if something changes, then I can send that invite to anyone else. That is interested. It's knowing what your schedule is, what it's able to be, and what you can dedicate to, and then inviting people in such a way where they are conforming to your schedule is what I've done at the very least, and I would say that it's been very important that I've done that.
And I mean, you seem to be very successful at it. So if anyone is listening and they're looking for where to start or whatever, organization, consistency. Obviously, consistency is also something I hear a lot. Streaming is competitive. There are views out there, but you have to have a consistent, I think, sort of schedule to kind of start making inroads. Otherwise, you're going to be me randomly streaming Final Fantasy VI on my exercise bike during the lockdown whenever I was kind of bored to maybe one of my friends who had hopped on because he had nothing else going on and just be like, hey, what's up, Derek? How's it going? But consistency. I think consistency is king. You have to. That's how people find you, right? It's if they don't know when you're going to be on, or if your schedule is always in flux. Like it's hard to make because people fall into rhythms. Like I know I have my rhythms with streamers I watch. If I'm at work, I sometimes will throw Twitch on, and I know that I have my kind of rotation of usually depending who's on. It's like, oh, Hamhawks is on, Amazonian, and then Jamie Topples, and then some. You know what I mean? Like that's just kind of, and you kind of get into a rhythm, and it's hard to. If people aren't super consistent on there, you're not gonna break them. So
hey, just like when you're on YouTube and you click look at your subscriptions and you're like, oh man, I know this person always posts on Wednesdays. What's going on? That ruins my groove, right?
Yeah. And if you follow this show, I post whenever I feel like it. So that's why I'm getting better. We're getting there. This is gonna be the one I feel like. When we put the Kuro video up, that's what everyone's like, oh, this is it. This is Kuro likes this guy. Bam. Gonna break those 200 subscribers.
Oh, hell yeah.
That big 200 is coming up. I feel it. Feeling big things for next year. So
I believe in you, bud.
I appreciate that. That means a lot. That made me feel really good right now. I feel like sometimes we don't hear that enough in our lives when people believe in you. That's why I think it's important to, I'm a big fan of complimenting people. Just like, hey, I believe in you. I got you. You're good. You're doing good. Yeah. Like it just feels good to hear that. You just want that slight recognition as you. So, anyways,
no worries.
But yeah, so aside from obviously streaming and playing Commander, I think we kind of you're I think the first judge I've had on, which is a whole other aspect of number one. Here we go. Whole other aspect of Magic that I don't it's for me is very foreign because I do this thing sometimes when I'll go on Reddit and someone will ask a Magic question and I'll be like, this is what I think the answer is, and I go through all the comments. I'm like, I was completely wrong. Very wrong. For however much stuff I thought I knew about the game, there's millions more I don't. But what inspired you to become a judge? Like, I feel like that is a dedication to the game that requires a different level of interest that like not everyone has. Like, to be a judge it's homework, man. You got to learn rules and everything. Like that's different from just I'm gonna go build a zombie deck right now with my Geralf and Gesselia? Is that you're the
Glisten Geralf?
There you go. That's the zombie commander, right? I think they like zombies. There you go, nailed it. But yeah. So talk to me like, what was the inspiration to become a judge? Like, what was that like?
It's I want to say 2016. It was quite the journey. So like I live in Buffalo, New York. It's a pretty big Magic community, here, and I was working at a card store, and so I wanted to be better at being able to explain and work through the rules of commander pods or just the wacky stuff that's happening all
Yeah.
over. I wanted to be able to be that employee that you could rely on for that. Um, and I was feeling that way, and then another friend was feeling that way, and then a third friend was also just like, we want to get promos, like let's get judge promos. It'll be so cool. And I'm like,
Hell yes. Those are cool
I
promos sometimes.
yeah, they are, but for me personally, it was like I couldn't care less at the time. My goal was to be able to just be relied on to
Yeah.
yeah, just to really know the rules. And then, but that friend who was just like, we're really on promos, he was kind of like the push, the push I kind of like needed to kind of like get in and like finally start trying to apply for it at the time. And they did not continue the process, but I did. I kept on going. Local L2 judge. Funny story. I didn't know I was taking the final like kind of judge test at the time. I thought it was just like a practice thing. Because he knew I was just like I'm the overly anxious type, constantly double guessing, blah blah blah. So he made it seem like I was just speaking out answers to like hypothetical questions, but turns out it was actually the judge test. So
pulled a fast one on you.
pulled a real fast one on me. But yeah, like just becoming an L1 like that, and then just meeting a lot of the people in the judge community. That was always just very very fun. That was like my first time going to non-local events and just kind of like experiencing that. But to answer the question, my origin story to like why I wanted to become one was because, and I think it ties into how I feel about Magic in general, is that the game is very good, and the game is incredibly deep and complex, and there was a lot of fun to be found in those rules and in those complexities. And it's not entirely like it's not unfun to follow the rules. Like say when you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh for the first time, right? And you're just like, it's gonna be like the show, and it's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna summon Dark Magician and summon Skull, and it'll be great. And then it's just like, no, actually, sorry, you have to sacrifice 2 creatures in order to do that, and you can only do it once per turn. And you're like, but I want to play Dark Magician. It's like, you can't, right? That's just not how it works. And obviously there's still fun to be had in Yu-Gi-Oh, but like that kind of like draining feeling of just like, oh, like it would be more fun if I could just not play by the rules and everything like that. I think that Magic can be incredibly fun while following the rules that are in place. You can actually learn a lot more about the intricacies of the game when it's just like, hey, yeah, haste, summoning sickness is a thing. You can't just go in there and attack, even though that would be more fun. But because that's a thing, right? Because summoning sickness is real, hey, here's a card here that says you give something haste, or like, destroy a tapped creature. Good thing you got to avoid that because you would have walked right into it. Things like that. And being able to know the rules very well and say like, hey, sorry, it doesn't work the way you think it does, but you could do this to get what you're trying to get to. Or, oh, this tap it this way, and it will lead to something even cooler that you weren't thinking about. I've explained this very recently, actually, at DreamHack, Atlanta, with the playing the Magic for Kids, the Magic Kids booth.
Magic Kids, yeah. Awesome booth.
Yeah, I was talking to the head of that, and he's also a judge, and we were just like, the things that really kind of like really excite us about being a judge, and mine absolutely is like that eureka moment when people learn something new that they didn't think was possible before, or just like didn't even think of. I really enjoy that moment of just like, hey, I don't want to rain on your parade. I'm sorry it doesn't work like this, but I know what you're trying to do, and here's how we can reach there. And having an intimate knowledge of the rules is paramount, at the very least, to kind of like helping people find that eureka moment.
Yes. Listen, we live in a society without rules. No, you make a lot of sense. I mean, I always joke when I went to college, I took a course on Magic. My buddy taught me like how the stack worked. Like I did, my friends and I played through high school. We played and it was Magic, but when he was like, "Oh, like do you know what the stack is? Like first in, last out?" I was like, "No." And like teaching that, here's a judge quiz. I lied. I am going to drop this on you. Can you explain? Do you know what
this was the L2 test the whole time? You got me again.
It is. Yes. Like a APNAP, AP, NAP,
active player, non-active player.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things. By knowing that, you can have such more control of your game. One of my favorite things is, talking about Arena, is there are a lot of mill decks on Arena, and I've played a lot of burn decks, and knowing that the active player gets priority on their turn and all their stuff is going to trigger allows you to cast a spell in response to a lot of things. I've won a lot of games against mill decks where I wait for their upkeep and all their stuff triggers, and they think I'm dead because I have no cards in my library. But then you respond with your own spell, and you bolt them or whatever to win, right? And that's the kind of thing that like understanding how priority kind of works.
Yes.
Understanding like all that kind of stuff. Like you can take your game to like another level, kind of to your point, but just by knowing the rules better, Gosh, my friends and I, we would just like, if we put like an enchantment on a creature that was like bad for the owner, we'd be like, okay, I'm just gonna sacrifice this creature, and like, now it's like, oh, you can't do that. You need some sort of sacrifice outlet, right? But like we didn't know, but like, I guess that was good because it killed it's a free removal spell in a way. But just like little things like that make cards make so much more sense, and you kind of know how they actually work, right?
Yeah, and then. They might be bummed to learn that you can't do that. It's like, oh, but now I'm losing like 2 life on every upkeep, and it's just like, okay, well, 1, it's okay, right? Like,
it's okay.
Life is a resource. First, okay, we got a lot to unpack. I will teach you that life is a resource eventually. Calm down. Yes. You're at 20, so 2 life is okay. But like, you can't just sacrifice. However, here's like a card that you have in your deck that you didn't even realize that like when you sacrifice a creature, you like gain 2 life and draw a card. It's just like, you could just do that, right? Like that's actually like pretty good for you that you like can or cannot do this, or anytime a permanent goes to your opponent's graveyard, they lose a life. Well, that's an enchantment. So when you do get to sacrifice this thing, your opponent put a great permanent in the graveyard and value that way. There's as I've said, it's just like being able to show people that there is absolutely a lot of fun to be had, even if you're playing within the rules, because the game of Magic is that deep and complex. I believe that that's like a way to get a true appreciation for the game when you realize that there's a lot of fun to be had, even if control exists. So even if blue is a color, sorry, but there's actually fun that you can have in blue. Here's my Attempsis deck. You want to see how fun blue can be? Here's Attempsis. There's Attempsis says when you deal damage with Attempsis, not just combat damage, but if you deal damage with Attempsis, you reveal your hand. You can reveal your hand. If you reveal 6 cards with different converted mana costs, the player that you dealt damage to loses, right? So I come and sit down with a mono blue deck, and you think it's just going to be all counter spells and all that good stuff, and I explain to you, if I countered every spell you played, I wouldn't have any cards in hand for my commander to, Exodia you. So you're about to see a different type of blue that you
Oh my god,
never
that is the
thought of
Exodia
before.
deck. You have made the Exodia deck. Oh, that's
Yes.
hilarious.
I-
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. You can take me out of Yu-Gi-Oh, but you'll never take the Yu-Gi-Oh out of me. I had the artist of Attempts like write obliterate on it, like.
Oh man, that's
so good.
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, too funny.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, in knowing the rule system, I mean, there's an article to write some days.
Many.
Magic rules and relativism with relativistic philosophy and rules in Magic the Gathering. Like that's a
Right.
thesis maybe for someone, but yeah, like having a common set of rules is how you can enjoy games. Or
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of like systems you can talk about in the world between moral systems, ethical systems, economic systems,
Yeah.
gaming systems, right? That's what
Yeah.
it kind of comes down to. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that is important by the further understanding the rules. Really, just will make you a better player overall, right?
Mhm.
So okay, not a judge question, but can you remember a judge call when you were working as a judge thing, like a really weird situation, or like something
Mhm.
odd that has stuck with you? Yeah, I can tell there's something.
Yeah.
There's something.
So there's a couple. The most notable one, this was a local area thing. It was so dumb. Just so dumb. So one player A, so they thought, this was back in the rules of Commander, where you like couldn't produce colors that weren't your commander's color identity.
Okay. Yeah.
And like it just wasn't a thing you could do. And their plan was to play like Contamination or something, which just like turns all like just any mana you produce. Sorry, all of your lands like lose abilities, and then they gain like tap produce black or something, right?
Yeah,
like
something like that.
Something like that. And then but in order for that, because it was a multicolored deck, so in order for them to like get around it, I think they wanted to play something like Chromatic Lantern or some effect where it's just like you have undone what you wanted to do in order for you to basically like be immune to it.
Yeah.
And they argued that that's like not how it works, right? Yeah, I really forgot what it was. But yeah, they argued that like if you tap a land to produce any mana, it's only just gonna come out as black, no matter what you do. And I ruled on it. I'm just like, that's just not how it worked. I looked it up. I've asked other judges. That's not how it works. They still argue that. They went to the judge's Facebook group where you are able to ask questions, or were able to ask questions at the time, and they explained their issue, and everyone explained to them that they were incorrect, and they tripled down and quadrupled down and they said that like every judge was wrong, and that if this is how it works, Magic the Gathering just simply isn't using the English language correctly, and that's just like what they believed, and they were unflappable in their argument, so much so that, and I remember this, I think the exact words were, I think the head judge of the Facebook group was like, I am closing this thread and removing this person because they are beyond our ability to help. Because they're just like so obtuse with their indignation, and just wouldn't listen. And I remember that I was just like, I just want to wash my hands of this situation. This is just so dumb. It was really, and it's like, if you look at the cards, it was like rather straightforward. It was, I think I want to say the ability was just like, if you tap for a land, it produces black, but then a secondary ability that just says like land, mana can be spent as any color or something like that, right? Where it's just like, well, clearly, obviously, you've undone what you did, right? Like it's not, it shouldn't be that difficult. And everyone's told you and explained to you. Over like 100 people explained it to you. You're just like, no, they're all wrong. There's no way it works this way. Clearly, I have locked my opponents out of being able to play Commander. Why are you taking this from me? It's just like, oh my god, like, Jesus. You just really want people to not play. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, some people get so caught up in their own whatever. They just can't.
Yeah.
It's a little humility goes a long way, I think, sometimes.
A long way.
Okay, I'm gonna pop this up on the screen. I'm gonna read it real fast. So
yes.
Contamination, 2 and a black.
Yeah.
During your upkeep, sacrifice a creature or sacrifice contamination. Easy enough. Whenever a land is tapped for mana, it produces black instead of its normal type and amount.
Right.
So, regardless of what you tap it for, that is pretty straightforward. There's not. I mean, I guess I could kind of understand maybe with Chromatic Lantern, but it's still not going to work how we wanted them to.
Yeah, If that's how it reads, then it definitely wasn't Chromatic Lantern, because you're right, it would just produce black. But they had another spell in such a way where, I think it was just like mana could be spent as any color, sort of thing. Where it's just like, okay, you've undone what you just did, but you believe that you're so right, and you think that your play is so epic that clearly it must work this way, and anyone that tells you otherwise is wrong. So much so that you get banned from the Ask a Judge Facebook group.
I mean, that's a impressive level of being wrong.
Yeah.
To his credit, like to have all those to
Yeah.
disagree with that many judges. It's like that Principal Skinner meme. It's like, it's the judges.
Am I out of touch?
No.
It's the children who are wrong.
It's the judges who are wrong.
That's right. It's Magic that's using the English language wrong.
Somehow, this is Mark Rosewater's fault. I don't know how, but it's his fault. Where's this blog talk? Where's this blog?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, it was wild.
That's funny. Yeah, I will say, I think judges are probably some of the most unsung heroes in Magic. Mm-hmm. You got to figure they're players themselves, right? Mm-hmm. They volunteer their time, or sometimes get paid for events, or they should get paid for events. Let me read that. Pay your judges. Pay your judges. Pay your judges.
Indeed.
And if you can pay them, pay them in cash, cold hard cash whenever you can, unless things are worked out of but pay your judges.
Correct.
But yeah, they go out and they just go out and learn the rules, and then they help run tournaments and whatever, I don't even know, RCQs and RCs and whatever the tournament things are called these days, and they're just they are that dedicated to the game that they take up that role, that mantle, and they help keep the competitive scene running,
And they I can also tell you I can tell you the one thing that scares me the most as a judge.
Hit me.
Because it's not being wrong. Judges are allowed to be wrong. That's something that judges typically have to get over. Themselves, just kind of as a personal
sure.
journey thing. And I'm okay with being wrong. That part doesn't faze me. However, the most times I've ever been scared as a judge is when I have to shuffle a player's deck in like a comp tournament, because I know that like when I shuffle, sometimes cards just fall, and that's like okay, but if I'm at a like comp REL event and I'm shuffling someone's deck, and you are able to request for a judge to like shuffle your cards at any point, right? Like for if you need to shuffle, no matter the reason. It's not like only in these circumstances. And I had to once. There was just like a player who just needed to have their deck shuffled for them, and I just kind of like had to stay around that part of the table and help. And every single time I was sweating bullets every like push of the cards in. I was just like, please don't drop a card. What happens if I do? I'll have to call like an L2. I revealed information that's important. Like, what happens? What do I do? I don't even know what the protocol is. I don't even want to think about it. That is my actual scariest like
doomsday
moment.
scenario. I was like, oh.
Yeah, like I can be wrong about something. That's why we escalate. People have argued like against me in the rules, and I don't even take it personally. I'm like, yep, we'll escalate it to the next level higher if you think that's like, because you can always appeal. I don't even take that personally at all. Don't even care. But what happens if I shuffle someone's deck and like just like spaghetti them?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do I just run away? Do I just run away as quickly as possible? I think that's just what I do. Until I learn more, I think that's just what I do. I just hide my face and leave.
Kuro dropped his deck, and then he never heard from him again.
Which just never heard from him again. Oh my goodness.
Too funny. Yeah, I would be paranoid. I would be more paranoid about dropping, and if like depending what you're playing, like how expensive the cards are. I could imagine like I've never like vintage, right? If someone's playing vintage, if there's like some moxes or stuff in there, I'd be like, oh, this is like here's like a mortgage payment or a car payment. And it's like, let's just very carefully make sure we don't mess this one up. But yes, again, unsung heroes.
Yes, absolutely.
Get falling on the sword for us. So, too funny. Well, there was one other thing I kind of wanted to touch on. Aside from being, a streamer and a judge, you are also part of the inaugural MTG Ambassador program.
Yes.
So I've had a few ambassadors on, all lovely people, all in my opinion very great icons of the game, of our community. I feel like a lot of the ambassadors have took a lot of unnecessary heat when the program kind of first came around. I think /hope you can probably speak to this more than I can. That's kind of tempered off as people have kind of seen what it's really about. So I just wanted to talk. Like, what is your experience? Maybe. What has your experience been so far as an ambassador? And like, what do you just as an opportunity, like, what do you think it means to you to be an ambassador? Like, what are your goals as an ambassador? What have you been trying to do with that role?
So, let's resolve this on the stack. So we'll do it in reverse. So we'll do the first one in terms of like if it's gotten, if we feel or we'll do I'll take the my opinion is me here. There we go. If I feel as though like the things have been better received, I would actually say no. I don't think it's been better received over time. And this, it definitely is my, personal bubble, the things I interact with, the things I see, which is is only so much. But I don't think I've ever gotten to feel overly comfortable doing like, hashtag MTG Ambassador. on a thing. That there has always been a layer of like, how does this look? How will this come across? Let me double check how I wrote this to make sure it doesn't feel too gaudy or too high and mighty or anything like that. I always and that's shaped, certainly like shaped the way I do content for it. I always I make sure that if it's an ambassador thing, it's something as like not even unoffensive, but just like flaunty as possible. There we go. That's the term now. Because that's not, and I don't want it to be misconstrued that way. I think that's my biggest peeve in general as just like a person. I hate being like misconstrued. And like and then like to kind of see people make a hashtag ambassador post and then kind of like receive certain levels of backlash and bad faith misinterpretations or whatever it is, whatever, it just people's reaction to it hasn't always been like the most hasn't made me feel the most safe in doing so like there's a lot of like second guessing and double checking that goes on, at least for me. That's just like how I respond to it. But like in terms of my goals for the program, I mean that hasn't necessarily changed since it began. I want to be able to get to a point where not only I myself feel like I deserve what's happening, but also just like, I hope other people are like, that makes sense. Like, Kuro deserves to be there, or, this is what Ambassador like looks like or is about. This box is falling. Like that's the, I get it. Like I want to produce something to make someone go like, oh, okay, I get it now. And call it imposterism or whatever. I don't feel like I've necessarily done that yet. But as the program goes on and as I remain part of it, I plan on still pushing towards that goal of making the content that people are happy to see that I've made, whether it be under hashtag ambassador or not. Like that's just always been like my goal, or at least my driving force. So I want to use the resources that WotC is giving me in order to achieve that, in order to do that a lot more. And it's certainly been ups and downs, whether it be community response or just literally dealing with anything involved in it, whether it be dealing with WotC, whether it be dealing with community response. It's all new in a way, like as you said, it's the inaugural iteration of it, and it has been a lot of learning. It's been quite a learning curve for sure for everyone involved.
I like I said, I've had a few different people who are ambassadors on the show actually before, and some before they even were ambassadors. But I think for the most part, everyone they chose is a very well-deserved, well-earned figure in the community. It was really a shame, especially from what I saw on the initial launch. A lot of vitriol, like unnecessary. Like it's and that's the internet, right? A lot of it's the internet. It's like the Twitter discourse and this and that. But I don't think people realize like the amount of people that maybe were complaining and like as a creator how you take that in, right? Because it's hard, because it's easy to be like, oh, like just have tougher skin or this, but like stuff like that, it hurts. You take it to heart. I'm a baby. Like I could never be an ambassador. Sometimes I do okay, so this is gonna be really silly. So I do TikToks, and all I do is I take magic cards and I write haikus. That's all I do. And
That's
sometimes I
impressive.
love it. It's fun. I think it's
Yeah.
fun. I don't really care. Like I enjoy it, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes if I take a new card and my head is a little too big, like I get people like move your head so I can read the card, and I'm just like
Mm-hmm.
I'll look at that and I'll just be like I'm sorry. I didn't realize you couldn't read. Like I will get a
Yeah.
helpful
Yeah.
for and it's just like
Right.
that's not nothing. That's not anything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And like the ways certain people just like freaked out
Yeah.
over like it's like guys this is not new. This is not like companies do this all the time. I
Right.
couldn't I couldn't understand like, maybe because the people they chose like I don't know who knows like why, but like it wasn't like they chose people who
Mm.
were bad for the community. You know, it was like
Right.
these are people that you see in our community who I think for the most part are all very well respected, all have user bases and people following them. So like
Mm.
what and literally the whole point was just to further the game. Like
Right.
and you're ambassadors of the game. Like I don't think there's any ambassador out there who is like a detriment to the growth of the game in any
Mm.
bad way. It's all like people promoting the game in a healthy and welcoming way.
Right. Right. And
So
and
it's
in a fresh way too. Right. Like it's
yeah,
the goal of the program certainly is to like augment what people are already doing so that they can do it even better
yep,
and just like be able to put more heart and soul into it, right?
yep,
Like that certainly helped me, like just whether it be hey, listen, whether it be not having to spend as much on product, um, but like being able to, at least like for me, for commander streams, right? It's just like being able to know that like on the day of I can have the ability to like stream the precons as soon as they come out, right?
yep,
Like that's like for me and just like how I do my content, that's been paramount for me to be able to like just show that off to people, right? If
yeah,
people like how I play Commander in the first place and like the guests that I have on, then like boom, they have an avenue to see what do the precons look like when they're played right off the bat. That's like a preview that you didn't necessarily get before, except by one or two studios, right? Like only one or two
yeah,
sources, but now you have multiple avenues to enjoy that. And then there's other ambassadors doing TikToks on it. There's other ambassadors doing YouTube videos about it, right? Like there's just the goal is to give at a certain cost to Wizard as at an acceptable cost to Wizards of the Coast to give different content creators of varying sizes, varying backgrounds, varying avenues of engagement the ability to do what they are already doing but amplified, right? Just like with a little bit of augmentation so they can just keep on producing more work that's already reaching people and having people enjoy the game even more.
mm-hmm.
Now they get to do it a week early, a week or so early, or give like a certain um aspect of a card or a card coming out before it reaches everyone, right? Like and that's all it is. It's not some weird underground market where like cards are being funneled and the economy is being ruined. It's not some like tournament upending situation where there's like cheating involved. It's not that, right? It's
Yeah,
being handled in such a way where like that's just not really what's happening. So I kind of wish it could be seen as a universally positive thing because it's supposed to be, but it isn't. It just isn't perceived that way. Not by everyone at the very least. Twitter is just one section of the Magic community, and
yes, yes,
and
very
as is Reddit,
small but
as is
vocal
game
section.
stores, right, and it actually does seem to be like the ambassadorship is actually like improving the game overall, and like the larger communities that just aren't online as much. So, but also at the same time, and I do like to give credit where it's due. I I know that not everyone is like approaching their criticisms like from a bad space, right? Like not everyone who had questions, especially when it first began, like I was the first one to make a post on it. And it felt cool to make the post. And then 3 seconds later, after like some likes rolled in, it's like a comment. What's the comment say? That's awesome. What is it? And then it's just like, huh. I don't know how much I can say. I literally don't. We actually haven't even done anything yet. I have no idea exactly what things are supposed to look like because like just because of how things launched and everything. Yeah, there actually wasn't like a solid FAQ to give people, and that's fair. That's actually a pretty fair question to have. What is it? How do I become a part of it? Did you sign up for it? I mean, those are, for what it's worth, those are fair questions. I didn't necessarily begrudge people for having them, and I begrudged more at the time. I begrudged more not being able or really knowing what I could say or even to explain what it was, because it wasn't like we produced a piece of content and then said, hey, this is an example of what we get to do. It was just like, I'm it. What is it? I don't even really know.
Let me get back to you on that.
Let me get back to you in I think a month when we first started doing stuff. So yeah, it's like, I wish the situation was as black and white as that judge situation where someone's just objectively wrong and being just very stubborn about it, but everyone can see that they're wrong, so it could just be just not ignored, but just it's like, all right, well, but we're all on the same page, right? I wish it could be as black and white as that. It wasn't. It isn't. But we are all still trying to do our best. Everyone's trying to do their best. Whether it be WotC, whether it be the ambassadors themselves, whether it be the community. They're trying to do their best to just understand what this is for and just what it's supposed to mean. And my goal, personally, is to keep on doing my best and just do more and more. Get better and better at it, so then I am serving the community in the best way I know I can, which currently is Commander games. And so if I can find a way to keep on doing Commander games in a better way, just a more unique way that helps you, understand precons better, or understand different aspects of Commander better, or show you a specific strategy that you didn't know works that way, and you get that aha moment. That's what gives me that dopamine hit, and that's what I'm going to keep on trying to do.
Very well said. Very well said. I mean, it shouldn't surprise anyone. It's really, to me, it's twofold, right? It's really the game nights model. They would give game nights the precons, so when they got released, there was content, right? So they took that idea and they just expanded to a wider variety of creators to do whatever they wanted with it, right? So it could be gameplay, it could be TikToks or whatever. So it wasn't, it's not anything new, but I guess people could, people had questions, and maybe the response to the questions was a little slow, but I don't know, it still was this is not people do this all the time. They're trying to get people, product in the hands of people ahead of time, so they have pre-made content for when the stuff actually launches, which is, it's smart, and it's just, and you're getting a wider gamut of content, it's not just all kinds of different stuff to see. So it's, it was interesting. I'm for what it's worth, I think the program is cool. I think it's a net positive. I am very glad you're an ambassador. I think you have earned and continue to prove you are a great figure promoting the game, and I hope you continue to do such things. So.
Thank you very much. I will continue to try, and one day I'll believe it too.
Let me tell you, as someone who does like photography and music, I'm always just like everything I do is crap. But you know, you keep chugging along. That's the creative process, I suppose. So, so Kuro, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I know it's if you're a night owl, it's getting late for you. It's getting late for me. You can see me; my eyes are already getting baggy.
I would have still been streaming at this time. It's fine. The game would have been winding down, but yeah, I would have still been streaming. So it's all good.
So I just kind of want to wrap a few things up. So all my guests when they come on, I have them choose a charity of their choice, and I just like to make a donation for them for kind of a nice little thing to come on. And you chose the Trevor Project. So I will be making a donation to the Trevor Project as just kind of way to support them. I know they've done a lot of good work, and a lot of people who've come on the show have supported them as well. So we'll be doing that. Additionally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop up my community board. So there, pop, I'll make a noise.
Pop, pop.
I would say that. And so I like to talk a lot about we've talked a lot about community tonight, and I like to talk a lot about community when I have in regards to my show. So what I like to do is to kind of continue to support you even after the show is done. Is I'm going to hop on your Patreon. So Show and Tell will become a patron of your Patreon.
Thank you so much.
So it's just a small way that I can kind of continue to support you in your efforts and your endeavors as you kind of go out and create awesome Magic content and continue to be a shining figure of the Magic community. I should have asked the real question is though, like who is your captain? If we're talking captains, are you? There you go. Kirk, a Picard, a Cisco, or a Janeway.
Picard. Picard has the Enterprise E.
Yeah,
it's so pretty. Look at it. Look at it.
It is so pretty.
It's oh my god, like this angle. Oh my goodness, beautiful angle right here.
That's
there's like a science behind Star Trek ships.
Yeah,
and they figure out what like the specific like angle that like to look at the ship is, where it's just like the sexiest, and god damn, this ship has a lot of them.
Does that one does the saucer section detach on that one too, or is that?
Yes, that's what they did in the movie, because the Borg were like trying to do something with the saucer section, and they had to go out there and spacewalk.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And then he what is it? He like launches to get off my ship. It's like kind of like Air Force One. And he gosh, it's been a while.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny because you have all the things that you ever got really mad with someone.
Yeah, you were just talking about it. I'm just
and
like,
you could break them all, and then
right?
and it's like you broke your little ship. Kind of like.
Oh my god! Yeah, that's what this is modeled off of. Like
yeah,
having the ships.
Yeah,
of Enterprise. Yeah. Oh god, that was the first time we ever. No, was it? Maybe it wasn't. I want to say it was like the first time we saw this C, because we didn't like know what that was. Because like A, B, D, E.
I think you're right. I think I remember. Like, the C had been one they hadn't, but because the D is
right.
Next Generation ship.
Correct.
And then E. Yeah, that's right. That's funny because the C.
And they did eventually do an episode with the C. I don't know like timeline wise, but like the C just looks like a smaller, lamer D. But I'm missing the C. These are the Eagle Moss like large figures, and I'm missing the C. So eventually, one day, enough magic money dollars will fall in my hands. Like
when all that ambassador money rolls in, you can
my gosh, yes, all that shadow money I get from manipulating the deck shuffler or something.
Yes, you get those checks from Richard Garfield coming your way.
Yes, himself. Thank you, Kuro.
There you go. Anyways, Chris, so thank you. Yes, like I said, we'll hop on that Patreon. Again, thank you so much for joining me. I will link all your socials. What's the best place? Are you pretty much Kurohitsuki everywhere? Is that fair to say?
Yep, everywhere. That you type in that name, you'll find me.
Gotcha. I'll link all your stuff. I know you have a link tree. I'll throw that below. So yeah, please check out Kuro. Check out his stream. Find him on Twitter. And if you like what he does, so think about supporting him on Patreon. It helps out, content creators. Like, it makes a big difference. Just any little bit you can kind of kid, especially if you enjoy their content.
It really does.
It makes a big difference. So,
thank you very much.
And you know what? If you are listening and you like what I do, wow, cool. I'm impressed. I'm surprised. Not impressed.
Awesome.
I'm surprised. Feel free to subscribe. You can find me on Twitter at Show and Tell to You #2. I always, it's funny because I had Power Dragon on, and he's like, you need to like tell people to subscribe to your thing. He's great at he's like, he gave me a bunch of advice, and he's the best.
Yeah, he's really good at that.
I'm trying to take his advice to heart. So I'm like, if you like this, subscribe, hit that bell, maybe not the bell, the notification. You don't have to do that. I don't do that thing by myself.
Hit it anyway. Hit it anyway.
Give you a like, hit that subscribe, and we'll keep doing these. We'll see. I got a bunch of people lined up for. I guess when this comes out, it'll be this year. We're talking about time travel now. There you go. The time travel, Star Trek, Doctor Who. There's a crossover.
Okay, I mean, so the Borg, after they destroyed the cube, the Borg sphere popped out, and they went back in time to try to stop the Federation from achieving warp drive.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah, it really,
It was Dr. Cochran. Was it Dr. Cochran? Was that his name?
Yep. Dr. Cochran.
God, that was a good
I remember.
Movie. I'm gonna have to go watch that movie again.
It's really good. What is that? That is the Belt of Ryan. No, not that. That, and then just photon torpedoes start hitting the camp. Oh my God, so good. We should watch it again.
We should. I like. Okay, this is not Star Trek. I like when they're about to launch, and he's like, "Oh no, hang on." He's freaking out, and like Wrecker's like,
"Yes,
get ready to abort." And he's like, "Oh no, we're good." And he puts in the thing, and it's
it's like a little hula girl.
It's a little disc, right? And it's the song. It's ticket. No, what is it? Oh my gosh, this is how I'm tired. It's like Steppenwolf. It's a song, Magic Carpet Ride. Mm-hmm. And it's he just used it, and then they're like, "Oh, it's a good scene. It's a good scene. Mm-hmm. Go watch it." That generation. No, that's First Contact. First Contact.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh God. First 10 minutes of that movie I could watch over and over and over again. God, it's so good. I'm gonna look it up on YouTube now.
There you go. Perfect. I do that sometimes. Just a bunch of Star Trek clips like from cool parts. So I might have to find that Worf one. It is a good day to die.
Yeah.
All right. I told you too much. Find Kuro everywhere. Like his stuff. Give him money. Like, subscribe here if you like it, and then we'll catch you next time. So thanks again.
See you, everyone.